if you've never listened to an erotica or audio porn together, I always recommend that because it's a very safe thing to do. You don't have the visual stimulation going on, but listening to something like that together can be a huge turn on for couples because they can act it out together. That's another, fun game night, if you will, or sexy time night. But I think the number one, think about what got you going in the beginning and how you can best recreate that for an evening and see if that doesn't sort of spark a little bit of the passion and bring it back into the
Let's start that I know you are a sexologist, intimacy coordinator, and holistic sex educator. How did you start your career as a sex educator?
It's actually funny. I fell into it, quite literally fell into the career. And prior to becoming a sexologist and getting my certifications in holistic sex education, I was a creative writing professor for 10 years at the graduate and undergraduate level. And then I worked a corporate job at a Fortune 500 as a learning develop or a educational technologist and a director of educational technology. So the pandemic happened and I was already very unhappy just working a corporate job. It felt like 60 hours a week. And granted, it had a great office, middle of Santa Monica, overlooking the ocean, like dream job. And then with that came a lot of animosity because I was also the only female on an entire team of men. And I felt like I wasn't being taken seriously and I felt like I was fighting harder than anyone else just to have my voice heard. And I was wondering, why did they even put me in this position? And I had been planning to try to get into something else for quite a while. And writing
Mhm.
erotica, writing about sex education, it was such a huge thing for me. And I was doing it under a pen name for many years. And finally, I felt shame about myself, about who I was as a person, anyways, just because I had all these thoughts and these feelings. And, I felt like I was constantly shoving my own sex life kind of in a closet because that's what you were supposed to do. You don't talk about these things. You're not supposed to be that type of person. You're not supposed to want certain things. You're supposed to be the giver and everything, right? So the pandemic happened, and like many people, we kind of went inward and we found ourselves in some way. You start searching the internet for information, and I was so bored out of my mind that I started going on TikTok. And I found sex educators on there, like Sunny Megatron, who was a kink educator. And I started hearing all of these different elements about things that really spoke to me as a person. And I just was so intrigued with it. So my algorithm was filling up with all of these amazing sex educators. And at the same time, I'm trying to get out of this position that I really don't want to be in anymore. And I needed a way to sort of keep myself busy. And I started doing silly little TikTok shuffles. I started dancing and I started posting them. And people weren't necessarily commenting on the dances. They noticed that I wore a submissive collar. And they started asking about what this collar meant, what did it, where did it come from, and why are you wearing it, and all of these different questions. And I became a sex educator because of one person asking, what's up with the collar? What does it mean? And the more that I started talking about it, the more people just kept asking more questions. Well, I've always wanted to explore this. How do I explore it? Where do I find information? And the questions were becoming so much so often that I wanted to start having a certification that stood behind me so that I could talk about it. And I found so much passion in it and teaching people about this stuff and opening their eyes to an entirely different world where I didn't feel so alone. They didn't feel so alone, and making it more of an accepting place to be and holding that space for people. So I found the Institute for Sexuality Education and Enlightenment, and it took me over a year and a half to get my certification as a holistic sex educator. And since I also had a doctorate and I was starting to work with people, I was writing. I opened up my door as a coach and was like, okay, this is a safe place. You can talk about this. And I gathered up enough hours to get my board certification as a sexologist. And that's sort of how I fell into the world of sexology and sex education. Sorry, that was a very long story. I apologize.
No, 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 no. I'm glad. I'm glad you shared that. Well, first of all, pandemic, like you said, it was such an amazing time because everybody reflect on themselves, and we were so like, we kind of got disconnected from the society before pandemic, and everybody was going after success. Everybody's going after money. Everybody going after whatever success means to you, but mostly the fame. And then when pandemic happened, people kind of like God, like you said, went to themselves and realized what is my passion, what is my thing, which was such a blessing at the same time for people to realize their passion. Now, I've been coaching for a long time. And one of the questions I always used to get asked was like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? And I love that you said you found your purpose by just, realizing this is what I like. You didn't like your job, but you knew what you wanted it. So now I know this is a great story, but for the listeners that are listening, and somebody's right now hate his job and saying that I wanted to change from this job and go to something else. What are some challenges that you faced and overcome during that time to be as amazing as you are now and so successful?
Oh my gosh, I honestly think the biggest challenge for me was finding the confidence to make the leap, to just say I'm done with this job, and this is and one thing that I'm very grateful. I had a mentor growing up that she's still a very close person to me today, and literally from she was my teacher because I was homeschooled, and I had one teacher, and she became basically part of the family, and she always encouraged me regardless of what it was that I was interested in, she always encouraged me to go after it. If your heart is pulling you towards something, there's a reason for it, and you have to fight with everything in your being to go after it in the way that you feel the most comfortable. So I knew that in order to make a career out of sex education, I needed to treat it both as a career, but also find a way to balance the passion with it. And if I didn't have the passion, I wasn't going to pour my heart into it. And if I didn't, have the heart, it wasn't going to be a career for me. So it became the challenge for me was finding that confidence of being like, okay, is this the direction? Is this what I feel like my calling is going to be, is to go after this? And when I still remember like the day I made that leap and I was sitting in a meeting with my boss and middle of the pandemic because I had just built this learning management system and we have all these flood of people that are coming onto the servers and I've been working literally 24 hours a day. And I wanted to take a lunch break and I wanted to go, I was trying to homeschool my kids at the same time because all of a sudden they were homeschooled. And I asked my boss for a little bit of time to just, can I shift some hours to middle of the night? I don't care, but I need to be here for my kids. I just want to go take a lunch and go do this. And he said that I needed that the people that were on my platform needed me more than my children. And I looked him square in the eye and I flipped the bird and I said, I quit. Find someone else. And I looked at my husband and he just gave me this big smile and this big hug and he goes, you did the right thing. Go after what you really want. This is not for you. You do what you want to do. And that was like, okay, this is sink or swim time. I'm going to do this. And I started putting every ounce of every day into writing articles, talking to people, networking, figuring out where and what I need to do to make everything work. And funny enough, I found some self-expression and an outlet for my own sexuality through OnlyFans of all things. And
Mhm.
that's what actually started to be able to pay for all of my others, my certifications, my degrees, my supervision hours. It was putting money on the table while I was still going to school and still building this other career. So now it's sort of this two-pronged thing that I'm doing with my businesses. And it's yeah, finding that confidence just to admit this is what I want to do and going after it with just so much passion that you can't stand it. That was probably my biggest challenge.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. And you went to a direction that is about sex. Now, sex is a very big deal, but it's very hush hush, even in today's society. Now, I know you travel a lot. We're gonna get to that in other countries, but even here in America, um, a lot of people they like it. They go secretly watch it. They want to be that, but when it comes to conversation, people it's kind of almost like a taboo thing. People don't talk about it. And you went from being working what you do and picking this. Why is it so hard for people to understand that sex is normal thing, and if you work in this industry, is just as any other job? Uh, this mentality that people have about that.
It's really interesting. I found a very, how do I say this? People love sex and they don't want to talk about it, I think, because they are so ashamed of it. And we live in such in a society where you're almost looked at as a deviant if you even bring it up in conversation. But yet we're our brains are so mismatched when it comes to just the whole idea of sex itself, especially as women, right? You know, we're
Yeah.
supposed to be sort of the sexy seductress in the bedroom, but then we're supposed to be, you know, Mother Teresa on the outside to the rest of the world, where we have this beautiful gift of our sexuality and of who we are sexually that is only reserved for one person, but if we give it away to anybody else, we're, you know, we're dirty, we're, you know, completely ruined. And this idea is so ingrained in us that I think it makes it so difficult for us to talk about to anybody, even to partners. And that's the number one thing that I see, especially in my practice. People will come to me, and it's mostly couples that
Yeah.
are like, we don't know how to tell each other what we want. And I always start off with, have a conversation about dinner. Really
Mm.
get down about what you want to eat to the nth degree, to just talking about the ingredients that you really love. And maybe there's something there that you didn't even realize that your partner really, really liked. If you can start a conversation about that, start moving that same idea to the bedroom. Hey, I love it when you do this. I love it when you do that. And you don't have to, you know, criticize or anything, but just talk about the things that you really, really like. Once that door is open, you go a little bit further. But this whole idea of talking about that in the public eye is like, oh my gosh, I can't do that. And I really feel like if we just get to the point of being able to talk about pleasure in a way that isn't, it's not always about sex per se. Sex starts up here. It doesn't
Right.
start, you know, with all the everything else is just kind of the gravy. And for some
Yeah.
people, it may be, you know, the kinks and the fetishes and everything else. For the rest of us, it might be just mentality wise, which is why I think just being able to open up about pleasure in general is such an important thing. So I know it's sort of a roundabout way of describing it, but I just feel like the more that we talk about it, the more we can destigmatize it. And the more we can just, this is a part of who we are. No one would be here if sex wasn't, you know, involved in some way or another. So why keep it hidden in a closet? It doesn't deserve to be.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it causes so much damage, especially for me, for young generation. I mean, um, after you look at a statistic of a rape and teenager pregnancy and things like that, we talk about it all the time and around election especially, but nobody's saying that, you know what, we're lacking education. That's what we're lacking in the family, talking about this and teaching our kids like it's okay to have sex or to have it in a safe way, or when to have it and how to have it. And even as a parents, we're very like shy away from that conversation, which is causes so much problem. So I'm glad that you brought it because, like I said, it's a taboo thing. But if I mean, you're a mother and I'm a mother, and I have two beautiful girls, but I'd rather teach them and talk about it myself than have someone, a stranger, tell them. I mean, just have a healthy education conversation about it, like not like to whatever, but obviously everybody does whatever they wanted to do, but to introduce them in a healthy way and explain to them that this is this is what it is. And like I said, you travel a lot, and I am from another country as well. So how is this sex subject um, change your perception toward your career and as a whole, with your own self, seeing other culture, seeing the way they see the sex?
It's so interesting. Like when I went to Japan and I spent 2 weeks traveling from Tokyo through Kyoto and Osaka and Mount Fuji. And one of the things that I always found really interesting was, and I did my research and whatnot. I certainly didn't want to say anything or do anything or even wear something that was, you know, completely, out of left field for the culture that I was going into. And in Japan, they have these very voluptuous, you know, anime girls that are you kind of it's plastered everywhere, at least in Tokyo. And that was the other thing. It's very different from Tokyo to Kyoto and how things are sort of represented. And in Tokyo, they have these shows and things like that where in fact my husband and I we were out trying to having a drink and seeing some of the alleys and some of the artwork and just getting lost in Tokyo, right? And we got really hungry and we ended up accidentally at a strip club that we didn't realize was a strip club because it wasn't marketed that way, but they had these beautiful like sort of cyberpunk girls walking around and with food and everything, so we thought it was totally legit, like this is a
Right.
restaurant. And you go in, but the interesting thing is they don't take their clothes off, but they call it, as once you're in there, it's called a strip club. And the women are very, voluptuous, and they come up to you and they chit chat with you. And it was a very different experience than how you see it sort of here in the States, where it's just everybody is walking around naked. Their ideas and things are just it was a very surreal experience because I really wasn't expecting it to be quite like that. But they also have, like I said, these voluptuous anime girls. They see women very differently. Women are kind of meant to be a little bit more submissive. They are very attentive to the male population and things. And then you go over to Kyoto and you have the geishas that are walking and the geishas that are serving and they're hostessing and things like that. And they're completely covered up, like up to their neck. And these very beautiful, ornate, ritual style sort of outfits. And it was just such a different experience, but I loved it. And I loved seeing the different perspectives of how sex was sort of being portrayed and what people found to be sexy. And compared to the United States, it's like you have to have the perfect body or it has to look this way or that way. In other cultures, it's not that. It's more about the
No.
persona. It's more about your demeanor and things for what they consider to be, sexual or sexy. And yeah, it was a different experience that I loved. And that's what I love about travel is getting to see all of the different ways that the cultures are representing pleasure, sex, just in general. It was a fun experience and it was an enlightening experience. I'll say that.
Yeah, just it's, like you said, it's so enlightening to find out that we don't have to take off our clothes to look sexy or for guys to find us sexy. And that's such an amazing culture. So, little story of mine that I know of, I'm gonna tell you. I know you travel around the world, but in Middle East, um, a lot of people in America ask me why Middle Eastern women, especially in a certain country, cover themselves head to toe. And besides the religion perspective, but the religion perspective, it explained back in the days, 100 years ago, whatever it was, that they want women to cover themselves. So when a man is interested in them, they have to be interested in of their personality, of their intellectual level, of like persona, like you said, and everything that is within us that they can hear you, they can spend time with you, they can like, but you don't see no body part. It's not a physical attraction, but it's mostly like your spirit, your soul, your conversation, your vibe, everything. They get to know that first before they see your physical body. I find that so interesting and so beautiful.
It is. I love that. Because again, sex starts up here. And that entire relationship, like it's the you like me for me rather than you like me just because of what you see on the outside. It's a concept that I wish we could teach more. And I feel like we've sort of lost a little bit of that here in the United States. It's fabulous to see it in Japan as well. People talking more rather than just sitting, in their a sexy looking female. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. What part of the
It's
Middle East did you go to?
Well, I've been around the world. I've been to Japan, I've been to China, I've been to everywhere, but I went to Dubai, I went to Iraq, I went to Afghanistan, I went to India, all of those places that I've been to a lot of places. So for me, the subject of sex was very interesting, how every country, every culture, every family give it a definition and practicing it. So that's why I was so excited to have you over here and share the same thing because I know you're traveling, you went to Japan and you saw that. But like you said, unfortunately, and our country over here in America is the people that made it that way. So first and foremost, the body, fakeness of the body, right? Like Cardi B and all of those people that are showing on the stage, and the young generation see that, they find that as sex, thinking that's sexy. That's how we're supposed to look like, which is really not true.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's
not just about your body.
exactly. It's interesting. This is a conversation I'm having now with my daughter. My daughter's in high school, so there's a lot of that exact conversation about, what does the world think is sexy versus what do you think is sexy? How do you feel sexy about yourself? Those are all conversations that I'm bringing up with her now, and I wish that sex ed also taught basic literacy when it comes to like media literacy or porn literacy for that matter, and understanding that what you see on television, what is being portrayed, is there because it is getting views. It is not what reality actually is. And what reality actually is, a lot of times people, it's not what they consider to be, media interesting. It's not what is gathering enough views and getting, the ratings and everything up. And to me, that's, I think, the most sexy thing in the world is to see what reality actually is, especially between, two people or multiple people for that matter. It makes me mad at the same time. It's like we need more realistic things and expectations to be there rather than it just being people like Cardi B who's a great singer and all the great stuff. But it's like, can it come with a disclaimer? Like
Yeah.
exactly 15% of me is real, something like that. Um,
Yeah.
just my 2 cents on it, of course.
No, absolutely, because we have to have more of this conversation. And like I told you, we bring in my show, I bring porn star, and it was funny. I had one of them that was, she was amazing. And I said to her, watching porn is not what you have to do when you come home. It's not even realistic. And she said, absolutely not.
It's
You
acting.
know,
It's beautiful acting, but it's acting.
and say that to 16 years old or 18 years old.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like I said, porn literacy. There when I was going through my IC program, my educational certification or sex ed certification, there was a group, an organization that is literally trying to put porn literacy into educational curriculum for teenagers, and or at least at the college, like entry college levels, at universities and things like that. That's actually like, hey, this is porn, yes, this is not what sex is.
No.
This is entertainment value alone. That is it. Does it help you feel sexy before you go have sex? Sure. Is it great to watch when you're, with your partner? Treat it as the entertainment, not as what the realistic expectation actually is. And unfortunately, so many times teenagers, they see it for the first time and they think that's what they need to live up to. And it does nothing but just diminish their own self-value because they think that they can't measure up. It's just a sad thing to see in the world, and but because we don't talk about it, kids are going to go see it anyways, and they don't know what they're seeing. It's one begets the other. If we can
Yeah.
start talking about it and start teaching it for what it is, we can start changing the paradigm and hopefully help with a lot of not only just self-value, self-worth, help the next generation to feel good about themselves and know that this is just entertainment. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, knowing that you talk to a lot of people about sex when it comes to sex, and like you said, the couple comes to you. Um, we, as a woman, especially more women than men, um, don't feel comfortable not only about sex but about our body because what we see out there. How can one person feel sexy and confident about themselves, not just with the sex, but in general, because of the digital world that we have right now? But let's just say, well, it's more goes towards sex because when teenagers are grow up and they wanted to find somebody to love them, to want to be with them, right now is the first impression is you look. So when it comes to being confident in your body, what is your advice? Like, how can somebody be confident with themselves?
Honestly, I think the number one thing is changing your mindset. And it takes time. Our brains become wired based on the way that we think. And if you tend to be very negative and your self-talk, that's the way that your brain is going to be wired. You're always going to see in the mirror, all the flaws, all the negativity, all those things. And once you start looking at yourself in the mirror, or you start even just looking at yourself as a human being, maybe not in front of a mirror, but just learning how to change that mindset and start shifting and basically rewiring your brain to self-love rather than to self-hate and to criticize yourself. It ends, I know it sounds probably very like holistic and new agey and all that kind of stuff, but it's honestly one of the things that I can speak from experience about, because I really went through a very large period of my life where I hated everything about myself. There wasn't a single thing that I thought was good. I thought everything in my brain that I was thinking was wrong, was bad, that I was somehow sexually a deviant. I hated my body. I hated everything. And once I went to therapy for many, many years. And that was the number one thing. You need to put that stop sign up in your brain that there are all these things wrong with you. You are a beautiful individual. Start talking to yourself the way that you want somebody to talk to you. You want all the love in the world from one individual. Give it to yourself first. Start having those conversations with yourself. God, self, fuck yeah, I look gorgeous today. This is awesome. My hair is feeling great. Oh my gosh, I got up this morning and I got coffee and I cleaned the kitchen. Go me. Like really start pumping yourself up. And it's going to feel weird at first. It feels like you are just, oh my, what's wrong with me? I'm talking to myself like this. I'm so conceited. But once you start making those shifts, you start to really feel it. It takes time, but it will come. And before you know it, you're like, man, I feel kind of sexy today. Like, oh, this shirt looks great on me. Heck yeah. And you start really feeling it. And then other people start noticing that same confidence being boosted. And they're like, wow, you're glowing today. Wow, it seems like you're in a really good mood. That's awesome. It takes those baby steps and it takes them over time. But if you don't start, you're never going to get there. So that's my biggest piece of advice is start rewiring your brain, doing those small things. The people talk about affirmations. They honestly, they do change your entire existence if you are committed to it and you start with those baby steps, whatever the little small thing is. If it's just you woke up this morning and you watered the lawn, give yourself kudos for that. And over time it will build. Does that kind of
Yeah.
make sense?
It's so and it's so easy, but yet so hard.
It
You know
is.
what I hate the most, and I always mention this to a lot of people that if I go to a party or if I see women or that thing, I hate when a bad bitch don't know she's a fucking bad bitch.
I feel that. I feel that in a big way, for sure.
You know, like you. I mean, I'm old, and I can say, oh well, I'm up there, okay, and I see 30 years old, 35 years old, the most beautiful girls, right? And they're like, oh my God, like, I'm like, shut the fuck up. What are you talking about? Like, what are you going to do when you're 40, when you're 50, when you're 60? And like you said, it start now. Because if you feel now in a young age, again, because of the society, so let's blame the society, because I always do, and that's the truth, you know, what they show us on TV and on social media, and we look at them, and half of it is almost edited and filtered and all thing. It's not real, like you said. Um, give you that mentality that I'm not as good as that person. Me, I don't look good or this. Then those things matters. What you think, it matters so much. You have to say to yourself, I am a bad bitch. I am great looking. I love myself. I don't care what size you are. I don't care how, because we do goes to that rabbit hole all the time. I myself is still do. I think, I mean, when I sometimes put a clothes on, before I buy something new, I'm like, eesh. But then I'm like, no, no, don't do that. It's just not going to work. And then the other thing that I find from my experience, that when you find you're self-confident and sexy, actually other people think you're sexy and you're attractive.
Absolutely. It's so funny. And I'll fully admit I have ADHD and I have social anxiety disorder, like bad. And people, when they hear that I have social anxiety disorder, they're like, well, what are you talking about? Like you have all this confidence. And I am like, honestly, when I'm in a room and I'm with a bunch of other people, I'm freaking out because I'm criticizing myself the entire time I'm there. And I'm trying, I put on my okay, this is my confidence person. And when I first started like doing a lot of photography, and my mom was a photographer as well. So she taught me, the poses and how to walk the walk and talk the talk and sort of thing. And she's like, you fake it until you make it. You really just put it on, and eventually you do it enough, it will just become ingrained in you. And this persona of the person that I, portray with my costumes and when I'm in my photography, that's Kipani. That's the version of myself that I always wanted to be growing up, someone that was confident and sexy. And I have portrayed her so much that I feel like she's become who I am today. So it's the same type of thing that I always tell my female clients, especially. The more that you start to just work it, show the confidence, create a persona, pretend to be that person. You do it enough, it will start to just naturally become ingrained in who you are. And before you know it, you are that confident person. And it's an amazing thing to see. So even in rooms today, I have to like calm myself down, like, okay, no, no, no. Today I am not me. Today I am Kipani. And that's how I'm gonna be. And I start to sort of just fall into that natural rhythm of being more of a confident person. And yeah, it probably sounds very silly, but it's worked for me.
Hey, I say, and I know I live by it, what you perceive as real will become real.
Absolutely.
And that's the truth. How we perceive ourselves, and that's who we become. And everybody can sit down and have that honest conversation with themselves. And I'm pretty sure they know that, but you couldn't fool me, girl. You do so amazing work. And I saw you and I like the body, the whole day. I can't believe you have 3 kids.
Yeah, my babies. I have my high schooler, my middle schooler, and an elementary kid. And whew, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Wow. Wow. It is a lot. It is a lot. So now there's a lot of listeners out there. Mostly our listeners are, from all ages. The other thing that a lot of people ask me and send me email and ask me on my DM, if you ever had sex educator or if you have somebody like this, can you please ask them this? And I'm going to ask you. A lot of people are having a problem finding or a authentic good relationship, especially girls that are in the age of 30 and up. And the reason for that is because they find somebody and they're talking to them and everything, but the confusion comes in. Should I have sex right away? Should I wait to have sex because the person have to like me if I have a sex? And then what if they ignore me and ghost me? Or if I don't have a sex, maybe they're not gonna like me. What is your opinion on that?
Oh gosh, every relationship and every person is so different. And I think when it comes to sex, especially in a new relationship, it's really important to take a step back and ask yourself, am I feeling like I want to jump into bed because of the new relationship energy? Because that is a very big thing. It's a very true thing. You get into that kind of frenzy of just, oh my gosh, I think, this person might be the one, or, oh, that they're just so hot and they treat me so good right now. And all of those things. And it's hard to know when the right time to make that jump into bed really is. And I think every person is going to be different. I know for myself, I've been in relationships where I waited a year before I jumped into bed with somebody. And then I've been in relationships where we had sex the very first night that we met and we stayed together for, 2 or 3 years. So it's very different for every relationship. But I think the most important thing is when you start having those feelings of wanting to do it, ask yourself why. What is it, and go through the worst case scenario. If this happens and they ghost me, what have I learned from that? Well, then they're clearly not the one for you, and that kind of shows their true colors. If you wait around, then they very well may decide to walk and all of those things. But if I wait, what is the good that can come from that? What is the best case scenario? Well, they can really get to know me. They can go through, you go through all of these different things to prepare yourself. And once you have made, you just feel it in that moment, whether or not that's going to be the person you're going to jump into bed with, or if you feel like waiting. If at any point you are like, I'm not sure, I would definitely say wait. If you are having doubts of any kind, wait. Give it some time. Let them get to know you. You get to know them, and you get to know yourself a little bit better too about what it is that you're really looking for in this relationship. Am I looking just to bed somebody because I'm horny in the moment? Or am I looking because I want this to be a lasting relationship? But regardless of whether you jump in bed now or you jump in bed later, the person's true colors are going to shine through, whether they are in a committed situation with you or whether they're just looking to wham bam thank you ma'am kind of thing. um I think for myself, a good 3 to 4 week window of getting to know somebody, the vetting stage, if you will, is really important before you jump into bed. But I also know that there's times where you just it's in the moment, and you just one thing
Yeah.
kind of leads to another, and you're hot and you're heavy and it just feels right. There's nothing wrong with that either. And to give yourself that grace as well. Does that kind of
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Because a lot of time we confuse attraction with connection.
Hmm.
A lot of people say that, well, I met this person I have a connection with, and but you really attracted to that person. And attraction is like, okay, the first thing, like we talked about, is the physical, is the way, the style, the swag, and everything. That's great, but it's not a connection. Because when we have a connection with somebody, intimacy is very important. Even sex changes. And you can meet somebody, like you said, I can be hot and bothered and say, okay, you know what? I'm gonna have sex. I don't care if he goes to me tomorrow. I'm good. you know, give yourself
Exactly.
that grace. But then, you go back and you guys are hanging out the next day and you become serious. When you connect with a person, sex completely changes. Now it's not just about being hot, just about like, oh wow, like two soul, one body.
Yeah, exactly. I think the difference, for at least for me in my experience, has been like when you have those instant connections, so to say, or instant attractions, and you have that. I'm jumping this guy's bones. I'm getting in bed. Like I need this right now. I don't, everything, throw caution to the wind kind of thing. A lot of times in those situations, the sex that happens is more about you, or like it's about me just wanting to get off and wanting to have this experience with this person. When you start having that true connection, it's no longer about you, it's about the other person. And you're starting to put more thought and more effort into every little detail, which you don't get right off the bat. That's something that comes with time, with getting to know the person's body, getting to know the person's mindset, getting to know them on a deeper, almost like a spiritual level.
Yeah.
And there, in my IC classes, there we had one class that was called spiritual sex, and what that feels like to truly be embodied in that moment with another person or multiple people for that matter. And the experience that comes from that, it's a soul orgasm. It's completely different than just the physical aspect of it. And it's such a hard thing to describe to people unless they've like had it themselves. But
Right.
it's a very true thing. It's a very real thing. And I think that there's just nothing like it. And yeah, I could go on and on about spiritual orgasms.
Unicorn. Unicorn. That's all. I have one word for that. I think the luckiest people experience that, and they're it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. But I would add to that, see if you agree with me, that also vulnerability. Once we get to that level of not only we care about other people, but as well as we show vulnerability, we no longer have that veil and protecting ourselves and like being shy and not being who we are.
Oh, absolutely. The vulnerability is probably the hardest part. And a lot of people don't ever feel comfortable enough to let that guard down. And I think that's another thing that I feel like needs to be taught as well. Like what does vulnerability feel like? And what does it feel like to put yourself out there vocally, physically, mentally? It's all different elements of that vulnerability that comes with all of that. It's a hard thing. For women, at least. I know for me,
Yeah.
being vulnerable is a scary thing. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
You're literally giving yourself, somebody else the ability to completely crush you. That's terrifying. But the sex that can come from that when it is taken care of the proper way, it's mind blowing. It is just,
Yeah.
there's no words to describe it.
Yeah. And those are the things that we have to keep in mind when it comes to sexuality and educating young people with that. So I know you said that a lot of people come to you and all, especially couples. Um, what about people that have been married for a long time and they kind of like, they're plateauing and now they're like feeling it that we're having sex, but it's not as great as it used to be. What is your advice for them, and what they can do in order to get their sex life again like exciting, and at least to the point that they're like, all right, we're not going to get divorced, or we're not going to cheat on each other because of that.
I think when I have couples that come to me and they're looking to, spice up the sex life, and I'll ask them, when you first got together, what was it that really sparked your feelings of being sexual with one another? What was there? What were the elements, the ingredients, if you will, into those experiences? And we would get really specific, like, okay, well, before a date, I would be, all excited and anticipating, what might happen that night. And I'd be in the bathroom and fixing my hair and putting on something sexy and, a little piece of lingerie or something underneath. And we would go to the movies and, I would want to like nudge myself a little bit closer and I'd feel his breath on my cheek and things like that. And he would, say similar things. Well, God, I would be so stoked to see her. And she comes out and I just want to grab her, but I don't because I'm trying to be the gentleman. And I go, how can we recreate that same scenario? Like just give yourself a date, where give yourself an entire week where you are going to not have sex. And then go and get yourself in that same mindset, separate for the afternoon or for the day, or maybe he's at work and you just came home from work and you're getting yourself ready and put yourself in that mindset of that same anticipation of, oh, what's going to happen tonight? What might happen? And give yourself a body massage. Put on, an erotica or something, audio porn, whatever you want to listen to, or sexy music, and start getting yourself into those vibes. Get the endorphins going because a lot of it has to do with those chemicals in the brain. Start heightening up those chemicals, those feel-good chemicals. And when you do see each other, have that sort of experience of going out, like go on a date. And it sounds so silly and so probably cliche, but having that experience of bringing back what initially brought you together into that sexual space to begin with can be a complete game changer for some people. And other ones, it might be that they are wanting to experiment with something that they had never thought was even on the table to experiment with. The yes, no, maybe checklists that are out there. And there's a million of these checklists of different sexual scenarios that you might want to try and might, or definitely don't want to do, or the maybe column. Give yourself the opportunity to go through some of those, and maybe something will spark there and start opening the door to those conversations. And that can be an entire game changer for some couples. You might learn something about your partner you didn't even realize was on their mind to begin with, and start exploring those different elements. If you've never listened to an erotica or audio porn together, I always recommend that because it's a very safe thing to do. You don't have the visual stimulation going on, but listening to something like that together can be a huge turn on for couples because they can act it out together. That's another, fun game night, if you will, or sexy time night. But there's so many different things. It just depends on the couple, but I think the number one, think about what got you going in the beginning and how you can best recreate that for an evening and see if that doesn't sort of spark a little bit of the passion and bring it back into the relationship.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Because we get used to like talking about bills and kids and problems and problems and problems. And then it's just like not attractive anymore. And I always tell people, like when you said, you know what, he's not attractive anymore, or she's not attractive, she's becoming naggy, or he's becoming irresponsible. And like you said, it's so beautiful to go back in the beginning and create that first time that you guys met, second time, and how you got to the point that you are, and simply complimenting each other, right? That also a big deal.
Oh my gosh, that's one of my favorite exercises to do with couples is sitting and talking. And it'll just be, I want you to just compliment them. Like just say thank you. What is it that you can thank them for that day? Well, oh, we've been doing nothing but fighting and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, understood. We all have fights. We all, have animosities, or we get into that space of just like, oh my God, I can't take this person right now, but they're showing up. They're there. Thank you for putting a dish away. The simplest, smallest things that you can thank each other for, it makes a huge difference because then a lot of times conversations and arguments and things like that, the negative conversations that happen, it's because the people aren't being heard, or they aren't feeling seen. And when you say thank you and you show the appreciation to that person, all of a sudden it's validating that they are there, they are being seen. And it goes both ways, right? When one starts feeling kind of
Uh-huh.
icky because they feel unseen, all of a sudden they're going to start kind of giving that back. They're going to mirror it. But when you start mirroring appreciation and thanks, it is a huge game changer for the entire relationship. It
Yeah.
sounds very weird, but it works. I promise it works.
No, it does. It absolutely does because a lot of time, like you said, now the power we have to have the power, the confidence, and again, that could get really mixed up. So now I build up my confidence. I feel sexy now with it, and then we forget, like, okay, that's great, but at the same time, being kind and giving your partner a compliment and appreciating what they do, that's even like I said, showing vulnerability, that can add up more to that loving relationship. So it's not like you're powerless. It's not like, "Oh, well, I'm not doing this for him because, no, don't have that attitude. I think it's important to differentiate those little things, that voice that plays in our head, that either I'm not good enough and I'm gonna just say yes, 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 yes all the time, or I am this powerful person and I don't give a fuck, so I'm not your thing. You got to do stuff for me. I don't need to do nothing for you. It's very important to balance that thoughts that goes to our mind.
It really is. And going back for a second to the appreciation and the thanks, for I know for some people, and because I just recently had a client like this who said that they have a really hard time saying it. Like for some
Yeah.
reason, just talking, but they can write. And they, writing something down all of a sudden, it's kind of it's almost like I don't want to compare it to keyboard warrior, people on the internet, but you tend to write things down that you aren't always comfortable saying to somebody's face. And the same thing goes with appreciation and things like that. And one thing, just because of our schedules, my partner and I, we're always like this. We're like two ships passing in the night, 99.9% of the time. But we have little notebooks that we leave on each other's nightstand. And every day we'll make a point. It takes 2 seconds to sit and just write, thank you for being here. Thank you for making sure that the car was charged up. Thank you for picking up after the dog when they went in the middle of the night, silly things like that. But it is so awesome to wake up in the morning and look at that and be like, oh, he noticed. Damn, that feels
Yeah.
those little things. And then vice versa, thank you for this or thank you for that. The smallest thing that takes less than 30 seconds can make the biggest difference. And just helping your partner to have an even at least start the day off in a positive way. It's
Yeah.
makes a big difference.
And also makes you feel good about yourself. When you do something nice to somebody,
Oh,
it just makes you feel so good about. And a lot of time people lacking that because they're not doing good thing for themselves, or they're not thinking of themselves. Let's going back to what we talked about, but writing down for somebody something nice, or being nice to yourself, and then you're doing that, it's just so beautiful.
it is.
So let's talk about if somebody is young and now they're 18 and they're trying to explore their sexuality. So there's so much stuff out there. And like we said, it's beautiful if you know what you're doing, if you know yourself, and you have to, I think that's the key that you said, you really have to
I
know
lost you for
yourself.
a second. What happened?
Am I with you?
Oh, there we
Am I
go.
with am I
Yeah,
with
there
you?
we go. Okay, you're back.
Okay. Let me ask this question again. So for a young generation that wants to explore their sexuality, and like you said, you have to know yourself, you have to learn about yourself, you have to be confident about yourself, you all of that is great. How they can navigate through all these noises.
Oh, it's hard. And this is one of those very weird things to me that it's like they turn 18 and all of a sudden, off into the world they go. They're no longer a minor. They can do whatever they want, and the entire world of sex just opens the doors to them. They can't go have a drink, but they can go and screw whoever they want, and it's totally fine. It's a very weird thing to me because I feel like 18 is still baby. It is still like you're still in your teens, sweetie. Like, and I even look back on myself and I'm like, oh my God, the things that I was doing when I was 18, I would never like
Oh,
just love yourself, slow the fuck down, and just chill out. You have so much time just chill out, and not worry so much. But I feel like for an 18-year-old today, they have the internet. I didn't have the internet at 18, but they have the internet that just is a plethora there. And I think the number one thing is take a porn literacy class for the love of God. Learn porn literacy, number one, and don't get yourself into a situation where you are feeling frenzied because it's your first time and don't be the kid in the candy store that has a full wallet. Don't do it. Take your time to learn. Take your time to learn the words safety and learn the word consent and really understand what that feels like to say yes when you really want to say yes, and practice what it feels like to say no when you really want to say no, because those things get mixed up a lot. A lot of times I feel like one of the biggest issues, especially with people that are 18, young, even teenagers and things like that, they say yes when they really want to say no, and it feels yucky in their body and they don't know why. And that is a feeling I feel like we need to help them practice, like be in a safe container and look at somebody and look them dead in the eye and say yes to something that you really want to say no to, and then say no when you really want to say yes, and analyze what does that feel like in my body. And it'll help to be able, when you're in those types of situations, to feel more confident to say no and to feel more confident to say yes when you really want to. But understanding those types of things, what it feels like to say no, what it feels like to say yes, consent, consent matters, consent, 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 and know that you can always take back the consent. Just because you say yes at the beginning does not mean that you can change, that you can't change your mind when you're midstream. It is okay. It's okay to do that. I feel like that is one of the biggest misconceptions that people in general, even outside of teenagers and 18-year-olds, even as adults, like the idea that if you say yes, it means that you have to keep saying yes, or you say yes once and you can't take it back later. No, it's okay to say no midstream. It'll help you get out of some bad situations that you get yourself into, because we make mistakes. But yeah, I think that's being 18 these days. I can't, ah, my own kids, I'm just like, oh my God, oh, we're so in for it.
Well, no, they have a amazing mother like yourself, so I'm sure you're gonna educate them. But like you said, and it's just important. Take your time. Take your time. Don't rush to anything. Finding your sexuality of who you are, what do you like and what you don't like. It's a lifetime lesson. It's not just, one day, the next day, because there's so many people talk about it. And he's like, I mean, I had a privilege of talking to somebody. She was a transgender, and she said from a childhood she knew she was, attracted to men, but it took a long time for her to come out, but the confusion and everything else that goes with it. So my advice for them is to just take your time, whether you're straight, whether you're figuring yourself out, whether you're trying to be somebody. I think time is the most important thing. And like you said, you have to say no when you have to, and you have to say yes when you have to.
Yes, I think definitely taking your time, getting to know yourself, and knowing that the way you feel today may not be how you feel 20 years down the road. You just because you aren't ready for something right now doesn't mean you're not going to be ready for it way later on. Or if you find that you're attracted to something now, you might not be later, or vice versa. Things change,
Mhm.
and that is okay. You don't have to figure everything out right now, but understanding that in time you will. It's everyone's in a rush. Everyone's in a rush
Yeah.
these days.
Yeah, only as you get older you realize that no, don't be in a rush. I like those clips of TikTok that they go and ask 19 years old and 80 years old, what is your advice? And says, take your time. Don't rush life. Do
Yeah.
not rush life. Enjoy the process of everything that you're doing. So now let's change subject. You're a mother, you're a wife, you're an entrepreneur, and you have an amazing body. You do this amazing costume, and you travel, you do all that stuff. How do you balance your personal life with your professional life? How do you make a balance on that?
I'm still practicing mindfulness myself. I preach it all the time, and I find myself getting caught up in a lot of just constantly being on the go. And part of that is my ADHD, and I've learned to recognize it. In some ways, it's a blessing. In some ways, it's a total curse. But I'm practicing more mindfulness of just taking my, again, we talk about time, taking the time, especially in the morning, to get my head kind of right with what I need to get done. And years ago, I would get myself so frenzied up to the point where I wouldn't be able to even do anything because I was so worried about needing to get 500 things done in the day. And because I was worried and trying to do 500 things, nothing would get done. And now one of the things that I'm doing more, and I found over the last maybe, I want to say 2.5 years, it's really made a big difference for me, is prioritizing just specific things. Like, what are the three things that if I get nothing else done for the rest of the day, what are the three things that I really would feel accomplished with getting done today? And I'll focus on those three things. And at the end of the day, I'm like, wow, I got those three things done and a couple of others. Or I got the first two done and I got most of the third, but that's okay. I can finish that tomorrow. And giving myself that grace has been a huge game changer for just being able to figure out my balance for myself so that I still have the energy at the end of the day to take care of the kids. And also just chopping the day up. Like my three, because they're all in different grades and they're all doing different things. They have their sports stuff. I got to do PTA meetings. I got to do all that stuff too for them. And oh God, calendaring has become huge for me. Having to sit there and do my block schedules of, okay, from 6 to 7 a.m. is my workout time. From 7 a.m. to 8, that's getting the kids out the door. From 8:30 until 10 is going to be my desk work. From 10 until 2, that's my, content making time, or my writing time, or editing time, or costume design time. And then after that, the kids are home, homework time, dinner time, they go to bed. That's my extra time to get emails and things sent out to people. And then making sure I get my at least minimum, try to 7 hours of sleep at night. So it's every day, at least 6 days out of the week. That's my schedule. And then I completely take Saturday off. Like, Saturday is my one day. Don't call me. Don't eat. You're not going to hear from me. This is my family time, and they get my undivided attention on that day. And I guard that like it is Fort Knox. That Saturdays are their time. I think it's really important to prioritize that, just for my own sanity, but so I don't miss out on things with them too. But that's, I guess, block calendaring and mindfulness and giving yourself grace. That's how I balance it all.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's important. It really is important doing all of that, especially when you have a young little kids and they need a lot of attention. And I know you have two dogs
I do.
too. They're beautiful. But yeah, no, thank you for the tip, and people that are out there that do half of your job and they say to themselves like, "Oh my God, like I don't have a time." So I'm glad that you share, and I want them to hear that there are people that are doing more and they're not as harsh on themselves than as some people that have a less to do, or they don't have a kids yet and they don't even know what that's like. Wait till you have kids.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It's having the kids, it definitely is it's a lot of extra stuff, but I probably wouldn't be pushing myself as hard with the rest of my career if it wasn't for the kids. And I actually, I had this conversation with my daughter not too long ago where I literally, I thanked her. I was like, thank you for just existing. Like this, having you here pushes me to be a better person, because I want you to see that you are capable. If mom can do it, you can do it too. And it was like very much of a bonding moment. It was very, very cool. So if you do have kids out there, thank them for being there. They probably won't understand it right now, but I guarantee you in 20 years, they're going to look back on that and be like, wow, my mom actually thanked me just for existing. That's pretty cool.
It is so true. It's so true. I did the same thing you do because my youngest daughter, she always asks me, "Mom, how do you get everything done? Where do you get the energy? You get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you do gardening, you do this, you do that." And I always tell her, "You, because of you. You motivate me to
Yeah.
do. And whatever I have done in my life to be who I am is because of my kids.
Yeah.
They're the one that motivate me. They're the one my inspiration. They're the one that because I want to be that mom, like you said, that one day they say, you know what, my mom was actually doing all that stuff for us, and she was a good role model.
Yeah.
At least that. So I totally get you on that when it comes to having your kids and thanking your kids is so important. But before I let you go, what does inner power means to you?
Inner power. Oh my goodness. I think inner power for me would mean being happy with the now and looking forward to the tomorrow. Not worrying about the tomorrow, but being happy with the now. And that gives me a lot of power to continue doing what I'm doing every single day because I'm so incredibly happy right now for the first time in my life. It took a long time to get here. So I feel like I'm just now finding that inner power for myself.
Oh, that's beautiful. Tiffany, thank you so much for being here and sharing your amazing journey with your career and your challenges that you have faced and being a mother and balancing life and everything. I really appreciate your conversation.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I very much appreciated being here. And thank you. I'm going to thank you. Thank you for existing and for just being such a lovely host.
Thank you so much.